Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have one more set of great revenge stories. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Don't want to pay me my full shift for 7 months? I'll get you fired. So this didn't happen to me, but to a friend of mine who worked in a different department than me. Now to the story. The supervisor came into the department and was one of those who wanted to make a bunch of unnecessary changes and implement a host of tedious rules. He'd write people up for being a minute late, for performing the job in a way he didn't like, for breathing the wrong direction, etc. You get the idea. Anyways, the department he came into was staffed by very senior members who'd been there so long, our company has a union that they're all a part of, they were making more than him per hour. They've been through their share of crappy supervisors, just part of the job at the company we're at. Most of the supervisors are crappy, because most of them are fairly young and this is their first big boy job, even if it is blue collar. They just keep their heads down and do the work since none of them can afford to leave. Since these guys have been there so long, they immediately noticed when their pay stubs were smaller than before. The supervisor was paying them for an hour less than what they actually worked, every single day they worked. A lot of these guys are making $20 an hour or more, so that's 5 hours a week, ending up at about $400 a month less than they were being paid. Of course, they were going to notice. I seriously have no idea how this supervisor thought he could get away with it. These guys, having worked together for so long, immediately came up with a plan. They decided to keep quiet, let him continue shorting them until the moment was right, as they knew the company would be forced to pay them the missing time, some of it was overtime too, as well as a settlement to keep it out of court if they played their cards right. So they waited. They kept putting up with these crappy rules and attitude and said nothing. They knew the supervisor was trying to get promoted, which is why he'd been moved to their department in the first place. By underpaying, he made himself look more productive with fewer hours needed. Of course, this made him look like a better candidate. He kept up the annoying rules and jerk attitude the whole time, which only made the revenge even sweeter. Everyone in the company knew he wanted the promotion that was coming up. He wouldn't shut up about it. In the break room, the office, everywhere, he told everyone who looked remotely alive and how he just knew he was going to get it. 7 months went by and the supervisor got promoted, just like he said. That's the moment they chose to come forward, and it couldn't have played more perfectly in their favor. Our company uses a time clock system, and each employee has a badge they use to clock in. The supervisor finalizes the time cards in the computer, and absolutely everything is tracked. Essentially, this supervisor was deleting their punch-in and starting them up an hour later, every day, for 7 months. Now, with our system, you can't just delete punches, you have to add comments because, like I said, everything is tracked. So this supervisor would just put in bullcrap notes like 1, 2, 3, 4, or some other gibberish to get it through. Every department supervisor also has to keep track of a physical binder that records what the startup time for that night was supposed to be, so that if there's any issue, they can reference the book. So when these guys came forward, it took less than 10 minutes of digging to pull up everything and see just how badly he had effed up. There was screaming, crying, a lot of apologies from the supervisor, but the damage was done. The supervisor was immediately fired, and now all the guys he effed over are getting back pay, plus overtime, and a settlement. They didn't disclose how much, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was several thousand. That was actually much better than getting him fired before he became a supervisor. Let him experience what he now can't have because of his crappy behavior. And our second story. Steal my car? I'll wreck your life. Backstory. I'm a part of a small family-owned type used car dealership. Cue used car salesman joke here. We have maybe 50 cars on the lot at any time, and our main business is subprime or people with less than perfect credit. We truly want to help people that can't afford or have the credit to buy from a new car dealership. We're actually very well liked in our small community. So recently I had these customers, let's call her wife and him husband, they're early 20s. They come into my store and I like them. They seem like a nice young couple trying to start their lives out. They have 2 very sweet little girls and could just use a break. They've made some mistakes in their early lives and have less than perfect credit. I coach them on how to improve their credit, and they seem sincerely interested in fixing it, So I bust my butt to get them a loan with the wife's mother co-signing on a nice third-row SUV. Wife is literally crying, hugging me because every other dealer turned them down. Now they're a little short on the down payment, so I take a check for the balance, and we agree I'll cash it on his next payday. Mistake number 1, but pretty common in this line of work. I forget about them until the next week when I drop the check at the bank along with the other deposits. Next thing I know, I receive a notice that the check is bounced, along with a couple of NSF fees attached for me, and the check comes back. It's a dollar amount that's considered a first-degree misdemeanor in our state, just under a felony. I reach out to the wife to see what happened and how we can make arrangements to get this taken care of. The last thing I want to do is go after a young couple with 2 small kids. At first, the wife is a little shocked and insists the funds were pulled from their account, and I show them the picture of the NSF check. She understands and says they can pay half in 2 weeks when she's paid again, and another 2 weeks pay the other half. I agree to this and just take them on their word. Mistake number 2. A couple weeks roll around, and I don't hear from the wife or the husband, and I'm now thinking I've been taken for a ride, ignoring my calls, texts, etc. You get the point. I get a call from the bank, and come to find out, they haven't made their first payment either. Now, with this particular bank, if the customer does not make their first payment, we have to buy back the deal. Basically, we have to give the bank the money they sent us for the loan. After blowing up their phones and Facebook, they finally call me back. I get the sob story. He got let go from his job, and he just started a new one, and mom is going to help them get back on their feet. I go through hell and high water with the bank to make a deal that if they make their payment, they'll keep the loan. But I'm still on the hook if they miss any of the next 3 payments. Wife also tells me they'll make payments to me on the bounced check once he starts getting paychecks. So I agree. They make their payment to the bank, and I go about my life. Until the next month comes around. I get an email from the bank saying wife didn't make the next month's payment and won't answer their calls. At this point, I'm furious and ready to just go get their vehicle. They won't answer any of my calls and call Mom. Mom scrounges everything in her Social Security paycheck to help try to make the payment for them, and it's short. Wife and husband tell her they'll cover the balance and, of course, don't pay. Bank says deal is a buyback. We need our money back for the loan within 7 days. Now, the only way I can pay back their loan is if my floor plan, basically giant credit card we buy cars on, gets pictures of the car in my possession. I try to call, text, email, message on Facebook to get a hold of both wife and husband, and they block me on everything. They're basically just stealing the vehicle without paying. They even blocked Mom, who's been trying to help them get this handled. Yes, they screwed over their own mother in this ordeal. I just want the vehicle back and to move on with life. So this is where I go pro-revenge on them. I begin dropping the check off at the local prosecutor, and they're delighted to file charges against them. I do some skip tracing, calling family members, all of which are more than happy to help because come to find out, the husband has had 7 jobs in 4 months and has burned every single family member with money they've borrowed. I find wife's father on Facebook. Father's been trying to take custody of deadbeat wife and husband's 2 kids because of how they treat them. He informs me they're staying in sister's house right over the border. We're on a state line of 2 states, remember this. I call up a repo company and even myself drive the hour to go get the vehicle. They've been hiding it in the garage, according to neighbors and the repo company. I do some searching and find out they're both on probation for stealing a bunch of stuff from multiple stores. So, of course, I call up Mrs. Probation Officer to see if she has a last known address. I mentioned to her that they're staying above the state line and bounced a very large check to me, and they're facing fresh charges in my town. She appreciates the knowledge. Now, while I was up at their house one evening, I talked to one of the neighbors, who also hate them. They're always yelling at their kids and at each other. I convinced the neighbor to call me if they see the vehicle outside. It took 1 day. I get the call. I send a very large friend who lives nearby them to go get the vehicle. After many expletives berating my friend, they hand over the vehicle, but not before finally calling me while he was there and telling me how they're going to sue and blah, blah, blah. I'm out quite a bit of money from the ordeal. But here's the best part. I just found out by living out of state they violated probation and just got sentenced to 30 days in jail from that. They also just had their video court date, because they're currently in jail with a probation violation, with the local judge on the new charges of the bounced check. I got my vehicle back, and guess what? Deadbeat wife's father got custody of the 2 kids. It's kind of cool how you can make 2 people so miserable while delighting so many neighbors, friends, and family. And our last story. Woman tries to steal my safety, gets a criminal record. Last Saturday, I rode to my town's street mall. Free motorcycle parking. My bike has a helmet strap lock. It looks like you can just grab my helmet and take off, but you can't. After lunch, I saw a woman trying to get my helmet detached. Crappy, right? Yeah, why don't you just cut off somebody's seatbelts next time? Luckily, there was a mall cop nearby. I filled him in and told him I was going to confront her. As casually as I could, I wandered over and started asking her questions. Wow, what year is that? An 800cc? Don't see too many women drivers. The mall cop was standing behind her the whole time. At first she answered, but then told me to F off. Hold on, I'm interested in your bike. She said, you can't have my bike, F off. F you, this is my bike, I say. Get away from it. She got all huffy and started swearing at me. Well, a real policeman ended up approaching us, and she turned to leave and ran into the mall cop. He grabbed her arm. We filled the real cop in as she tried to wriggle out. The mall cop had been filming on his phone and showed the real officer. She was taken to the station, immediately released, but got an $800 charge for attempted robbery and a court date. Nice and simple. ProRevenge doesn't have to be a complex web of wit and scheming. Sometimes just pinning a person in their own lie long enough. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.